What would you do if the person who enforces the rules was the one breaking them? Slipping into your yard, swimming in your pool, then hitting you with violations when you spoke up. I'm Preston Gaines, and the week my family finally got the pool we'd saved for turned into the week I learned peace needs a latch you can trust, and a backbone you didn't know you had. Yeah, that happened. We'd dreamed of this pool for years, my wife Tanya and I stashing away overtime checks so Jordan and Ava could cannonball their way through Carolina summers. And when the contractors finally pulled out, I stood there in the late light, that water looking like a piece of sky we got to keep. And I thought, this was worth every tired morning. 3 days later, I walked out with my coffee, and something felt off. My beat-up flip-flops were damp and pointed. Wrong the gate latch. I always drop sat a little crooked. A set of faint wet footprints trailed from the shallow end to the back gate. Not mine, not Tanya's. Smaller and turned in at the toes. And I told myself it was nothing, until I saw Ava's flamingo floaty bobbing in the deep end, even though the box was still in the garage. I asked Tanya if she'd taken a dip she gave me, that "you are not fooling me" look, and said no. So we asked the kids at dinner. Jordan got offended like only a 15-year-old can, and said he wouldn't touch the filters without asking. And I believed him. Which left one answer I did not like. Someone was using our pool. I'm not quick to accuse anybody. You know what I mean. So the next morning I grabbed 2 motion cameras on my way to work in Durham, one aimed at the deck, one at the gate, and by Saturday they were up and talking to my phone, and I told the quiet backyard like it was listening. All right, then let's see what we see. Sunrise. Sunday, I start scrolling alerts. Squirrels, raccoon, wind moving branches. Then a clip tagged just after noon mid-swings, and there she is, clear as day. Claudia Hensley. 2 doors down, late 50s, with the church luncheon wardrobe and the person who loves HOA rules. The way some folks love college football, pushing my gate with her hip towel under her arm. No sneaking, no hesitation, just ease. Sandals off into my water, like it was a community amenity. She personally approved, even popped my cooler, and helped herself to a soda. And I just sat there with my jaw tight, called Tanya in. And she went quiet. In that way, that isn't fear. It's anger that knows it needs to be careful. I walked over the next morning, not shouting, phone in hand with the clip cued. Claudia was trimming her flower beds. Smile like a porch light. I held the screen where she could see and said this, and she barely blinked. The gate was open. Preston, I'm on the HOA board. I was checking safety. We like to share in this community. It builds harmony. And I felt that heat behind my ribs, but kept my voice even. Inspections don't look like 40 minutes in my shallow end, and a lemonade. And her smile thinned to a line. If you're not open to sharing, I suppose the board will have concerns about your patio furniture. And she turned her back and snipped at a hydrangea like she'd just signed a ticket. 2 days later, the mailbox started coughing up nonsense. Solar lights too bright for aesthetic uniformity patio umbrella. The wrong shade of blue. Bins visible too long, even though I rolled them back like everyone else. A dogwood tree. I apparently needed to trim, even though it was planted before we bought the house, and I laid the letters on the table, one after another, and said, "This isn't the HOA. This is Claudia with a printer," and Tanya rubbed her temples and said she's building a smoke screen so nobody sees what she's doing. That afternoon, I caught Claudia coming through the gate again, with 2 friends in tow. Floppy hats, tote bags, laughing like they had wristbands. I took photos from inside and didn't burst out because that's the trap, right? She wants the outburst, the see how aggressive he is. Story, so I stayed still. And documented. And when Ava came home the next day and found Claudia and 4 women in the water, waving her off like she was interrupting, that's when something in me locked into place. We're not going to be bullied out of our own backyard. Claudia kept pushing that line, walking past my house with her little terrier and a phone up like she was filming, just documenting. She said, sing-song voice noise, complaints about my mower. And I told her, calm as a judge, make sure you get the part where you trespass. Her smile flickered, and that flicker told me I'd picked the right road. Be smarter, not louder. So I went to work the way I wire a panel, neat labeled undeniable. I printed stills with timestamps, laid each bogus letter next to the clip that preceded it. A timeline from the first wet flip-flop to the latest violation. And I emailed the HOA president, Gerald Lyons, to get on the agenda. And I called a friend who knows a property attorney in Raleigh, sent over a sample clip, and the attorney didn't hedge. That's trespassing and retaliation. If your board won't resolve it, the court will. The clubhouse was packed because neighborhoods love a show. Tanya squeezed my hand. Jordan sat behind us like a coiled spring. Ava stayed home with a neighbor because she didn't need to see adults pretend. Up is down, and when Gerald finally called me up, I plugged in a USB and spoke like I was telling a story. Not making a speech. Here's my gate. Here's Claudia walking in here. She is with friends. In my chairs, here's my daughter, stopping on the deck looking scared. While grown women wave her off, and the room made that sound people make when they see truth framed in pixels. A low, oh that spreads row to row. Claudia stood without waiting, calm tone with a little edge. The gate was open. I checked safety. If the latch is loose, that's implied access, and those notices were legitimate concerns, and Mr. Holt in the second row. The kind of neighbor who has lived enough life to be allergic to nonsense, said loud enough for the back wall. Safety checks don't look like sipping lemonade in another man's pool. And whispers broke, and heads nodded, and Gerard asked, do you deny swimming? And Claudia paused, thin smile cracking. Swam once or twice, for safety. And a laugh rolled through the room like thunder at the edge of a storm. The board went into the little side office and came back 10 minutes later with a decision that didn't need a drum roll. Suspension from HOA duties, pending full review, barred from my property. For any reason, vote was 4 in favor. 1 abstain, none against. And Claudia gathered her clipboard without the smile she usually wears, like perfume heels clacking a little too fast as she left. You think that's the end, right? But the twist is this. The paper crown was always the point, not the pool. Claudia's power wasn't swimming. It was being the person who could weaponize the rulebook while pretending she was the victim of your tone. And once the room could see that her grip slipped, and neighbors, I'd never heard more than a hello from started sharing their stories. The Halloween pumpkins, she cited the kids' car. She photographed the way quiet fear kept people from saying what everybody knew. A week later, Gerald called and said the board reviewed everything and removed her. And I sat on the porch and let the air finally feel light again. And that night, we swam for the first time without that tightness in our chests. Jordan tried to dunk me and failed. Ava did handstands by the lights and came up grinning. Tanya leaned on the edge next to me and said, "You kept your head." And I told her the truth. I kept it because losing it was the only play Claudia had left. I saw Claudia once after that, dragging her trash cans to the curb. No porch light. Smile, just a stiff kind of quiet. Our eyes met for a second, and I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired, and a little sad, because if she'd walked over that first day and asked for 10 minutes to cool off, I probably would have handed her a towel and a soda. But that's not what bullies want. They want to take and call it sharing, then punish you for calling it what it is. So here's where I leave it with you. Because endings are never clean in real life. A neighbor told me she's talking about reputational harm. And lawyers, maybe she files a complaint. Maybe she doesn't. If she does, we'll answer with the same thing that got us here. Dates. Video comm truth. And there's a debate baked into all of that. Should I have posted the clips to the neighborhood page on day one and let the crowd decide, shine a light, and end it faster? Or would that have turned humiliation into something uglier? I chose the board because I wanted process instead of a pile-on. Was that the right call? Or did keeping it formal just give her room to keep spinning? Tell me what you think in the comments. Tell me where you're watching from. And if you've lived through a clipboard bully or an HOA power trip. Share your story so folks know they aren't alone. Hit subscribe if you want more real stories told plain. And weigh in on the big question: what's fair, what's petty, and where do we draw the line between neighborly and entitled? Because that line is the difference between a place you live and a place that finally feels like home.